What's going on, everybody? Zack Rosenblatt here, NJ.com, here at Lincoln Financial Field. The Eagles just lost to the Minnesota Vikings, 23-21. They're now 2-3 on the season. It was their first meaningful loss at Lincoln Financial Field, really in a couple years. They lost once last year at the Link against the Cowboys in Week 17. I'm here with Kaye. The Eagles are in bad shape right now. I mean, this is not where we knew this was a tough stretch, but I don't think anyone expected them to come out of this 2-3, especially with Carson Wentz was the quarterback in 2 of the 3 losses. Like, this is just not where I saw the season going.
You know, Zach, it's not panic time, but it's close. I mean, we're getting there. This is a situation where this Eagles team can't get out of its own way. The offensive line played really poorly in the first half. Carson Wentz did not look sharp. He was missing wide-open receivers from a vision standpoint. Didn't look like he was connecting well with anybody outside of Zack Ertz for long periods of time. Alshon Jeffrey didn't play up to kind of he had one big play. Jordan Matthews and Nelson Aguilar were pretty much non-existent. This offense, look, you can talk about the defensive struggles all you want. This offense is torpedoing this season. They did it with Nick Foles. They did it with Carson Wentz. It doesn't matter who's at quarterback. They have just stopped and started throughout this 5-game season. And they can't get, even when they get off to a good start, like against Indianapolis, they had that perfect drive, and then they stalled. They have not scored over 23 points in 5 games. This isn't a Doug Pederson style offense. Doug Pederson's even making boneheaded play calls or questionable play calls, whatever you want to call it. The offense is the problem here. The defense has done its job at several key moments during the season, and the offense has come up short time and time again early on in games. There's a way to get yourself in a hole without being in a hole in the scoreboard. Not taking advantage of good opportunities. For instance, let's talk about the one play that sticks out to me is the Jay Ajayi fumble in the red zone. They had all the momentum in the world. Like, that was a great drive to start the first half, and you know, they had the running backs really involved after not using them at all in the first half. Ajayi fumbles. You know, it took away points from them, and the difference was
they were at the 6-yard line.
Right. The final score read 23-21. If they get a field goal there, maybe this is a different record. Maybe this is a different game. Then on top of that, you talk about the mistakes made by the offensive line. Carson Wentz was hit several times during the first half. There were times where he had to hurry so much he couldn't make a second read. Lane Johnson, for the second straight week, gets beat by an opposing defensive lineman.
We'll analyze like specifically how guys did in a little bit. I think we should let's jump on a few of the main plays that I think were the turning points in this game. You mentioned the Jay fumble. That was bad. I think the blocking was bad on that one. Jason Kelsey even took some responsibility after the game. When Lane, you were touching on this just now. Lane Johnson gave up a sack. I forget what the player's name was on the Vikings.
Stephen Weatherly, very good defensive end, but he's a backup defensive end. Beat him inside. This is the second straight week that Lane Johnson's given up a big sack that's stalled momentum. Not only did it stall momentum, the ball came loose. Linval Joseph returned the most effortless big man touchdown I think I've ever seen. I mean, Isaac Suomalo did nothing to prevent that from happening, and he was on top of him when he caught the pass. So, you know, that's 7 points there. Then they cost themselves 7 points with the Ajayi fumble. Those 2 turnovers are huge in this game.
I mean, it's just so strange how Lane Johnson has been the one giving up those plays, especially, but that really, I mean, that probably was the game-winning play if you think about it, honestly. Maybe less serious than those, but still I think had a big impact. I think it kind of sucked the momentum the Eagles' defense was kind of starting to get. There's a play in the first half. I think it was the first half. Michael Bennett got a really good sack on Kirk Cousins. I mean, really good. He literally dragged him down slowly. It was like the most slow motion sack ever. He got him from his legs, which I guess is why they called it roughing the passer penalty. Everybody was up in arms. The guys in the locker room said they didn't feel like that was a penalty after the game. It kind of goes with the whole narrative that the NFL is kind of making it impossible for the defense to even rush the quarterback anymore. And that after that play, I mean, that's a 15-yard penalty that put them right in the thick of the Eagles' territory. They scored a touchdown 2 plays later. All of a sudden, the Eagles are down in the hole.
17-3.
17-3 was at the 17-3, yeah. And I mean, maybe that play specifically isn't the reason why they lost the game, but like that clearly sucked some energy out of that defense because they were really happy with that. They had 9 pressures today, but only got Kirk Cousins down once. It should have been twice with that. And who knows, if the floodgates start opening up, because the Vikings don't have a very good offensive line. They lost their right tackle. I'm not sure if he returned. Reif. But I mean that just goes into this whole controversial thing the NFL is doing right now, trying to protect the quarterbacks. It seems to have helped other teams more than the Eagles so far. That's not on purpose or anything, but that was a play that stuck out to me.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about some of the plays that Carson wasn't able to make because he didn't see guys wide open. There was a third down play where Nelson Aguilar was so wide open he could have walked to the end zone, or at least the first down. They were at midfield and he targeted Alshon Jeffrey across the middle. They weren't able to connect. The ball was off the mark. Look, the defense took the flack for the Titans game. I still think the ownership goes to the offense partially in that game. This game was about the offense because...
I mean, the Vikings only scored 23 points. That's not
much.
Right.
You can't... What more do you want from the... and really, the offense only scored 16 points, if you really think about it. So... Look, this wasn't a great showing by the defense, but the offense really needs to start taking ownership of all the. Look, 23 points. If you're scoring less than 23 points, you're putting your defense in a predicament. No matter how good they are, even when the defense has some great moments. Now on the defensive side, they have struggled to create turnovers. The Eagles are constantly losing the turnover battle. They're not getting the ball back for their offense.
They have one of the worst differentials in the league right now.
Right. And so, Carson Wentz has coughed up the ball twice in the last 2 games. This overall group is just really frustrating, I think.
That's the word for this team right now, frustration, because it's another situation where Jim Schwartz mentioned how they're 1 play away from 3-1, 2 plays away from 0-4. Like it's still the same. You still can say the same thing. They lost by 2 points despite all these mistakes we're talking about. Like that just goes to show you, like they're just making the mistakes that they weren't making last year. Like I think it's time we return the page and just realize like this is not the team from last year. That's just the reality. The offense is a problem right now. The defense has a lot of issues, though. I think the defense is okay. They have problems. I think a lot of it has to do with depth. They don't have great depth on the defense. They didn't have Derek Barnett and Haloti Ngata tonight, so they had to play Trayvon Hester and Josh Sweat probably more than they should have played. But, I'm concerned. They have a short week. They play the Giants, who are coming off a close loss. They might be highly motivated. The divisional games are always hard. And then after that, it doesn't get any easier. You got the Panthers and the Jaguars coming up.
Yeah, this is not a fun stretch for them. This should have been a game that, at home, they really should have taken advantage of. Dan Bailey bailed them out twice by missing 2 chip shot field goals, and they couldn't take advantage of that. A low-key frustrating point outside of this game, but still impacting this game, is the Eagles have taken on so many numbers on offense because of all these injuries that defensively they're shorthanded. Ronald Darby went out of the game for a few plays. Rasul Douglas was their only option to put out there in nickel because Avonte Maddox is now your starting free safety.
And they decided not to sign any other safeties.
Right.
Yeah.
And I will say this. I thought Avonte Maddox played very, very well on defense and special teams. I think we'll come up with the studs and duds tomorrow, or Monday. The defense played really well in the second half. This is on the offense. They
held the Vikings to 6 points in the second half.
Yeah, for sure. And look, again, the offense only scored 10 points in the first half. It's one of those things where it's easy to pick on the defense because you'll see Jalen Mills give up the occasional or sometimes the frequent big play. You'll see Ronald Darby.
He gave one up to Adam Thielen today. Yeah.
Right. And, I talked to Malcolm Jenkins after the game, and he said, you know what, I got to get a better rush on the quarterback for that. Malcolm Jenkins said he thought that both Mills and Maddox played very, very well in this game. Mills had 3 pass breakups on third down. I think each of them was on third down. So I thought Mills had a bounce-back game. Corey Graham barely played, and when he did, he suffered a minor injury, I believe. Look, there are good things about this team. And you're seeing a lot of guys get playing time that normally wouldn't, but there's injuries, and so they're starting to develop a little slowly. That's the positive. Another positive is they have no time to dwell on this loss, and they can move on to the Giants, which we'll get into probably later in the week. But, look, the positive here to me is they came back in the second half, 18-6 in the second half. Maybe that jolts them into some momentum moving forward.
Yeah, I think, you talked a little about the corners. We can start from there. We evaluate by position. I think we can touch on that right now. Mills gave up that big play. Quite notably, over the next two plays, he shut them down. They were able to keep them at a field goal. On the last play of that drive, on a third down, he stopped Adam Thielen, and then he started jawing at him and talking trash. And you saw this moment where Fletcher Cox kind of showed why they made him a captain this year. And he literally shoved Mills to the sideline to get him to stop doing it. It was to get him off the field so they didn't get a penalty. Mills has a tendency to celebrate in moments when he probably shouldn't be celebrating and talking trash when he's not exactly a guy who really can be doing that right now. And that was a cool moment. Maybe cool is not the right word, but I think it was a real leadership moment for Fletcher Cox to do that. They were fine after the game. They spoke on the sideline, but Jalen Mills, he had a pretty good game, honestly.
Yeah, I thought he had a pretty good game. Yeah.
He had a few pass breakups, as you said. He was pretty good at tackling. Ronald Darby showed some progress in tackling because he'd been pretty bad so far this season. I mean, they weren't perfect, but Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen, they're going to get theirs. They're good receivers. Kirk Cousins get the ball out quickly. The Eagles' pass rush wasn't getting there quite quickly enough. So I think the corners you can be okay with, but I am concerned about the depth now that you have Avonte Maddox as a full-time safety.
Yeah. I'm kind of speechless with how they've handled the depth. Haloti Ngata didn't play in this game. They went with 3 defensive tackles. Only one of them is Fletcher Cox. You know what I mean? The defensive end group, they went with 7 defensive linemen in this game, which is not all that typical, especially for a team that rotates and does platoons on the defensive line. I thought the linebackers played pretty well. Look, Jordan Hicks is a great blitzer. I thought he played well in this game. Nigel Brown had the huge play that led to no points, the dropped lateral that he was able to recover. I thought that was a huge play in the game that the Eagles' offense predictably couldn't take advantage of, even though they were in the red zone. The intentional grounding penalty on Carson Wentz really bit them there. And it could have been the difference in this game, one of the big differences in this game. Defensive line, I thought they played well. They got regular pressure. Chris Long got a couple pressures early on. Mike Bennett, obviously.
With Chris Long, I think it's pretty clear that he doesn't have the athleticism to close out rushes anymore. Mm-hmm. He's getting to the quarterback, but he's just not finishing it because he's just not quick enough to get. And there's one
Which
play,
is still valuable.
Yeah, it's still valuable, but they need someone who gets there because that's kind of been the issue. And there was one play where Kirk Cousins pump faked and he completely bit on it when he would have had an easy sack. I mean
he's probably taught that.
Yeah. I mean we're probably supposed to jump at that. Michael Bennett, he looked really good at the start of the game and you kind of didn't hear from him very much.
That's kind of
later.
been his MO lately.
Maybe that's why he's a part-time guy with this team. And Brandon Graham opened up with probably the best stretch he's had all season. Mm-hmm, he had a pass deflection that forced a 4th down, and he had his first sack of the year, which is big. It was the only sack the Eagles had on the night. Considering they didn't have depth at all to speak of, I think you can come out of it feeling pretty good about the defensive line.
And for what it's worth, before you move on, Trayvon Hester and Josh Sweat, I got to look at the tape, but both looked pretty good in run stopping in this game. So I think that's a positive to take away. Again, you're seeing guys develop in roles that they normally wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah. I mean, we touched on the offensive line. I think it's worth talking about a little bit more. It's a problem. It's gotten to the point where, Lane Johnson looked like a bigger issue than Isaac Samalo by the end of the night. Samalo started off struggling. I don't think after that, this first drive, he was bad.
He was horrible. You're being nice.
Yeah, he was. He let up a sack. He got bull rushed. But after that, I don't think we really heard from him as much. I mean, he wasn't good. I'm not saying he was good. My point being, Lane Johnson had a bad game.
Yeah, I don't know what's up with him lately.
It's weird.
He's not getting a lot of help.
That strip sack was all him, though.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. He lost at an inside move. But this is a guy that you're used to, not having to worry about sacks or pressures at all. He had an incredible. You could argue he was the best right tackle in football last year, if not one of the top three offensive tackles in general. I wanted to touch on Samalu because a lot of people question that decision of doing this in this game, and I completely buy that. But if the logic was, you know what, long term, we think that Isaac gives this team a better shot than Wisniewski, and Wisniewski is struggling, then you want to do this now, so that way he's ready for the Giants game and he's actually got some snaps. Remember, you're going to have a short week going into that Giants game, so I understand the logic of using this week to
make a change. Yeah.
To make a change. Remember, look. Also, Jason Peters.
He's better than Halapoulivaati Vaitai,
right? But
he's not Jason Peters.
Right, Jason Peters. It kind of looks like a shell of himself. He's leaving games in the middle of it.
I mean, and you're seeing like even Jason Peters at not his best is still better than Vaitai. Vaitai comes in for a play, gives up a sack. So like left tackle is kind of an issue right now.
Yeah, it's a major issue, and you know what? That's a thing that again all this money. You want Peters to retire here. He's earned that right. But you've invested a ton of money into him that you couldn't invest elsewhere, and I think that might turn out to be a really costly mistake, if not showing you a lack of foresight. He is a guy that is regularly injured now that he's later in years. But
he's 36 years old, yeah.
Moving on from that, I want to talk about the one position that did win the day, in my opinion, tight end. Zach Ertz is
amazing.
Zach Ertz, I don't think people realize how good Zach Ertz was targeted 11 times. He caught 10 passes. He is so automatic for this offense.
He's had almost 10 catches every week.
Right. This guy's on pace for
the Eagles have never had a 100-yard pass catcher, and he's going to soar past that. I think he legit, based on just these 5 games, he has a case as the best tight end in the NFL right now.
Oh, without a question. He's going to be an all-pro. There's no question in my mind. And he scored his first touchdown today. Dallas Goedert did a really good job as a blocker in this game, at least from the snaps that I was able to.
Still not targeting him enough, I think, but
right. He had 2 catches for 16 yards. Listen, I feel like we could have a whole podcast talking about how good Zach Ertz is. That said, let's move on. We have been talking about this for 3 weeks. Get Sheldon Gibson involved. Well, you saw what happens when you get Sheldon Gibson involved. Got a 48-yard.
And then they didn't look at him ever again.
Right. Well, I think they have packages. Like a lot of what teams will do is if they have a speed deep threat, they'll have like maybe 5 plays for him in a game. And if they get to him, they'll get to him. Listen, Carson Wentz didn't throw a great ball. That was not a great downfield throw. Gibson had to kind of look back and play center field there a little bit. He had to leap for it. It was impressive. Strong catch. Gibson's a guy you got to see involved more. If you're going to keep him on the roster, when you're keeping 6 wide receivers and 5 running backs, you have to use him.
He's their only deep threat they have. Clearly, Nelson Aguilar is not
they
that.
They don't view them as that.
It boggled my mind that he had that play, which was impressive. Like, he did most of the work on it, really.
Right.
And they just didn't look at him ever. That was his only target today.
Now, I think moving forward, maybe they look at the tape and they say, you know what, we've got to get him more involved. He's shown that he can do it. His only catch has gone for 48 yards.
Jordan Matthews ain't going deep. Like, I don't get why he...
Well, he caught a pass for 4 yards today. So,
like, play him over Jordan Matthews. Like, Jordan Matthews is bringing nothing to this offense. I'm sorry.
And he started the game, and that was that, and that's interesting. Alshon didn't have as great of a game as you thought he would have.
He had one really good, I think, 31-yard catch.
Yeah, where he
Other than that, he had 1 catch on 7 targets, I believe. Like, that's kind of the ratio he was going with last year a lot of the time when he was like struggling to get grooving with Carson Wentz. I mean, he looked really good last week. You don't expect that week to week. Maybe this was just a bad night for him. You kind of hope. Yeah. But they can't really get that kind of performance out of him.
Right, I agree. Moving forward to the running backs, we've talked about it a little bit. That Smallwood catch for a touchdown was really, really impressive. It reminded me, you remember I think it was against, I'm trying to remember who it was against, but Carson was in the red zone getting absolutely manhandled, and he threw a pass off his back foot, and it hit Corey Clement for a touchdown. That's what it kind of reminded me of as Clement was being thrown out of bounds. Look, Wendell Smallwood deserves some respect on his name as a receiver and a runner. He is not a good blocker. That's been an issue. Corey Clement was active for this game. I don't think I saw him play a snap.
I think he might. Wasn't he the one that got the 2-point conversion? I'll have to double check that. Keep talking while I look.
Yeah, keep looking. He is their two-point conversion beast.
Never mind, it was Smallwood.
Yeah, it was Smallwood. Yeah,
thought...
whatever.
Yeah, so Clement was active only in name, really.
Right, and before when we were all musing when he was working out, he was catching passes, so we assumed that he was going to be active.
But he didn't practice all week, so I still would have been
unless
surprised.
you need him, like, what's the point?
Yeah.
Josh Adams, though, that play call...
It was to set it up, it was, in the first half, it was 3rd down and 3, I believe. And they ran it outside to Josh Adams, and he lost 1 yard. Like, they have Jay Ajayi, and Rendell Small has been running the ball well, and they went to a guy who's not really known for running the ball outside. Like, I just didn't. We're going to talk about Doug Pederson after we're finished evaluating the offense. He just made a few calls like that, and I just don't understand what he was doing.
Sometimes I feel like when you're creative, sometimes you outthink yourself.
Yeah.
Doug's a guy that seems to want to try a lot of things, and I can dig that. That was not something you should have tried. No. That play is like a play you have in your playbook for Darren Sproles, and that's kind of what you do. Or Corey Clement. Look, Jay Ajayi...
he was upset that... not upset. I talked to him after the game. He mentioned how they didn't care... They had 2 carries in the first quarter, and I believe...
They had 5 for 14 yards in the whole first half.
Yeah, and the running backs in general, I think, only had 12 carries. And Ajayi said, like, I just don't understand that, and I think we all feel the same way. Like, that's kind of an Andy Reid type thing where they're just like, they have talented running backs who are running the ball pretty well. I know Ajayi's, I don't think he's himself right now because of that back injury, but, like, you need to be running the ball. And that Isaac Seumalo, like, don't put him in a position to have to pass block for 3 straight plays to open the game when you're deep in your own territory. Like, you got to run the ball there. Like,
I don't know what they saw on tape coming into this game.
You can't pass the ball 3 straight times to start. Like, I just didn't understand that at all.
Well, they had some mismatches. Like, there were times where Anthony Barr was on Alshon Jeffrey and Carson Wentz didn't check out of it and immediately attack that mismatch. This was a very weirdly coached game. There was the 4th and 20 where Doug said that he was trying to draw them offside, so they got an extra 5 yards so that Elliott could kick a field goal, or they would just punt with a delay of game. Doug Pederson, to me, is a rhythm coach. When things are going his way, he can really
firing on all cylinders.
Call a good game. When this team stops and starts, gets stunted by their own mistakes, he kind of struggles to adapt a little bit, and I'm wondering if that's what's happening here.
I know we've talked about this before, and we can only emphasize it so much, but I think we're really seeing that he's missing John DeFilippo, who outcoached him tonight, coaching the Vikings offense, and Frank Reich. Like, clearly something is just different now between him and Mike Rowe and Press Taylor than with Frank Reich and John DeFilippo. We're both like veteran coaches of football, whereas Mike Rowe has been around a while, but he hasn't really had this much responsibility in his career outside of like a 2-year stretch at Virginia in college. Press Taylor I don't even know if he's 30. Is he 30 years old? Like, he's really young.
He's pretty
Nothing
young.
against him. I hear a lot of great things about him, but I just think there's just something different about the way this offense is flowing between their performance and the way they're calling the games. And I don't know, this offense stagnating is one of the bigger surprises of this early part of the season.
Well, listen, it took a while for Reich and DeFilippo and Doug to find their mojo, too. 2016 was not an easy year for this franchise. It was the start of something great, but again, you've got there's a lot of change. There's a lot of new guys in new positions. And again, I think they're overthinking a lot. There are some judgment calls where it just kind of seems like they're getting too cute, or they're just really trying to stump the other team as opposed to going with what works. There's a reason why all these movie studios greenlight all of these superhero movies is because they go with their bread and butter, and it seems like the Eagles have gotten away from their outside zone and moving the ball around and their hurry up offense, and
they almost never target down the field.
They don't target down the field. They're not taking the right risks sometimes, it seems. Look, Super Bowl hangovers are legitimate for everybody but the Patriots, and I'm kind of wondering. not if the success has gotten to their head, or I'm not trying to put anything on it that's not there, but sometimes when you don't have a full off season, sometimes when you don't have a full off season, you have so many changes, you only had so many draft picks, your salary cap was not very it wasn't
helpful.
ideal.
It wasn't helpful.
It wasn't helpful. Look, there's a lot that comes out of winning the Super Bowl. I mean, you're seeing a lot of these playoff teams struggle. You're seeing the Falcons struggle. You're seeing the Seahawks struggle. You're seeing, I mean, pretty much
the Packers got killed by the Lions.
Yeah, you're the only teams that are really thriving right now are the Los Angeles Rams and the Kansas City Chiefs. Even teams that are, 3-1 or 4-1 or what have you, are struggling a little bit. Their close games is a very, very, very peculiar start to the season for a lot of teams.
The NFC East is wide open, though. That's one of the big things to mention. I
know this is the review show or the post-game show, and we want to focus on that, but this is a quick week, so I don't know if we're going to get that middle of the week show in. This NFC East is awful. This is a terrible division right now. And so that's the solace you can take in this loss. The Giants lost today. As we're speaking right now, the Texans are leading the Cowboys. The Redskins play on Monday night against the Saints, who I think are the NFC favorite outside of the Rams.
And the Saints have struggled. So. The
Saints have struggled. So, you win this game against
the Giants. It's a long season.
You win this game against the Giants. The Carolina Panthers struggled against the Giants on today. Even though the Giants try to give them the game, I wouldn't worry about this upcoming matchup with the Giants. I wouldn't worry.
If they lose it, then all of a sudden they're 2-4 going into 2 hard games. But yes, I get what you're saying.
The Jaguars had a really rough game against Kansas City. There's room for optimism here. You have to finish. If you finish 10-6 in this season, you're going to win the NFC East running away. I think you can even win it at 9-7. This is kind of reminding me of like the NFC West before Pete Carroll and Harbaugh got to the division and it had its renaissance. But like I said, there's still reason for optimism. The Eagles did come back in the second half and play pretty good football. It's just you have to be able to get going in this league. If you set yourself up where you're not thriving on those first 3 drives, they punted their first 2 drives, and then they got a field goal on their third one. But by then, the Vikings had all the momentum. I mean, that's just what it is. So you set yourself up for failure if you're not having one of those drives like Carson did against the Colts in Week 3.
All right, I think that's a good spot to end on. We'll get another pod, at least one more. Probably won't be able to pull off 2 this week leading up to the game because it's a very short week. But yeah, thanks for listening. It was a tough loss, but as we said, we don't think the season's quite over yet. They still have some games they can win coming up. On that note, as always, make sure you subscribe. We're on all the apps, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, SoundCloud. Follow us on Twitter, send us a question. We'll try and answer it. And, thanks for listening, guys.